Would like to welcome everyone. We'll start the webinar. We will start the webinar because of time, so that the rest can find us on the way. So first and foremost, I want to greet everyone. New Year greetings. Happy New Year to all of you. I would like to welcome you to this session of the tea farming in Kenya, integrating watershed governance and agroecological management practices. My name is Rosinah Mbenya. I'm the country coordinator for PELUM Kenya. PELUM Kenya is the national network, which has a membership of 56 NGOs who are promoting agroecological principles and practices around the country. We are operating in 42 out of the 47 counties in the country, and we are reaching out to small-scale farmers with information on agroecological principles and practices. I will be the chair of this session, and I will be joined by three speakers, and I would like to invite them to briefly introduce themselves as we continue with the session. So I'll start with Esther Bett. Please kindly introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Esther Bett. I want to wish you all a happy 2022. I work for an organization called Resources Oriented Development Initiatives, and we work with small-scale farmers in 15 counties in Kenya. We work with the prisons, and we do a lot of work on agroecology. I'm the executive director for RODI Kenya, and I'm happy here to be able to share my experience as a tea farmer, as well as having the experience of working with tea farmers in Central and in the Rift Valley in Kenya. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Esther. I would request Duncan, Ndirangu, and Samuel, who are using the same machine or the same laptop, to be able to introduce themselves. So Ndirangu and Samuel, please, briefly.
Thank you very much. I wish to welcome everyone to this session. My name is Duncan Ndirangu from Organic Agriculture Center of Kenya. We are situated on the ridges of Aberdare, whereby our work is to promote sustainable livelihoods and landscapes. And we use agroecology as the approach to promote good livelihoods on the Aberdare ecosystems. With me is a farmer who will mention his name.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maina Ndirangu. Being a local farmer, a small-scale farmer. I do organic. I have experience in organic for some time. We join hands with Duncan with all the trainings and the rest. And I'm happy to be here today as we share the session ahead of us.
Thank you very much. Those are the speakers that we have for this session. And just a quick reminder that you can introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us interact in the chat. You can introduce yourself. This session now will entail an interactive discussion and also our reflections from one of the projects that we have been implementing here in Kenya, which is the integrated watershed management and for diverse livelihoods, or for diverse farming enterprises. This project has been implemented by PELUM Kenya together with 5 of its member organizations, that is RODI Kenya, SACDEP, OACK, RODI Kenya and COSDEP. And it's a project that has enabled us to apply principles of agroecology in transforming the livelihood of small-scale farmers, and particularly the tea farmers in the water catchment areas of Murang'a and Kiambu counties of Kenya. So we shall be sharing more about our learnings from the same, and we hope that we shall be able to enjoy this discussion. Welcome you all, and we hope that you shall be able to follow this discussion to the end. Just a quick reminder that we hope that all of us shall be mindful to each other, so that we can be respectful to each other and also to the speakers. And therefore, with that, I would like now to move into the session. And as mentioned, it's an interactive session. So I will start with our speaker, Duncan Ndirangu, who shall be able to tell us what are some of the agroecological practices for sustainable food production that have been applied by the Kiwama Dife project, or the project that we are talking about, among the tea farmers in the Aberdare's ecosystem since we started the project in 2017. So Duncan, please.
Thank you. The project, which is Kiwama Dife, has been promoting agroecological practices with the farmers in this area across Kiambu and Murang'a, whereby some of the things that we've been promoting are and includes use of biofertilizers and biopesticides. In this case, we were able to interact with the farmers to dissuade them from using chemical fertilizers in feeding of their crops. And one of the crops is tea, which primarily they have been using chemical fertilizer offered by KTDA, and sometimes they also buy by themselves from the stockists. But then the project, when it came in, had an opportunity to introduce the use of manures and also farm-made biofertilizers, as well as use the same on other crops. On the same breath, it has been able to promote use of biopesticides, whereby although tea does not require pesticides, the other crops that are grown and promoted by the project need to be protected, and therefore the farmers are shown how to make their own concoctions from plant materials to protect the crops. The other thing that was key in the project is agroforestry, which is growing of multi-purpose trees and tree materials that would help the farmers in feeding their animals, for example, and also providing fruits, as well as having prospects of making income in future from sale of fruits, and also to diversify from just having tea as a cash crop, and also have another crop. The other thing that the project was doing to support agroecology is plant trees, because agroecology also considers protection of the environment as a very important component of farming. And therefore, the project was supporting the rehabilitation of degraded areas by planting the suitable tree species. For example, bamboo seedlings along the rivers, or even on the landslide prone areas, so that we can protect the rivers and also the soil. The other thing that the project was looking into is water harvesting. We cannot talk of good agroecology without thinking of soil water and efficient use of that water which is available in and around the farm. One of the things that we were using is to use mechanisms that will conserve the soil, the water in the soil, so that it can be used longer by the plant, including even dissuading farmers from using the riparian areas and growing crops upstream, not next to the water sources, but near the homesteads, by use of collecting and harvesting water. We were also harvesting water for small-scale irrigation by supporting the making of water pumps, installations of these, which so many farmers were interested in, so that they can secure themselves from the nowadays prevalent droughts. The same project also focused on seed production it is important for farmers to know where their seeds are coming from, because commercialization of seeds have made farmers vulnerable. And through the project, we were able to learn with the farmers how to have their local seeds preserved and produced in the right way.
Okay, thank you, Ndirangu.
Same way, diversification
okay.
was. Can I continue?
Yes, just wind up so that we can share more as we continue the question, but just wind up.
Yes. As we said, it is about tea farming and agroecology. Farmers here were just depending on tea, and therefore we, through the project, thought that diversifying their activities on the farm is very important. And therefore we were able to show them how to grow other crops that could be income generating and good for food, good nutrition, and as well as showing them how to manage livestock, including dairy goods and dairy animals and poultry very well, as well as growing the fodder in the right way.
Okay, thank you, Ndirangu. We have a question that has just come in, and maybe you can quickly respond to it as we move to the next speaker. What kind of water pump do they build, and how do people maintain the water pumps? If you can be able to answer that, Ndirangu.
Okay.
What kind of water pump? Yeah.
It's not water pump, it's water pumps. It's earthy dams that are suitable for this area, which is a high rod, of course, which we use plastic dam liners to make earthy dams, which will preserve water, rainwater, or the rain runoff from the rooftops or the ground, so that we can use later when it is dry.
Thank you so much. I would like to move to the next speaker, who is Esther. So Esther, briefly, you can just briefly mention about tea farming in Kenya, and then you can help us in your own terms define the role of agroecology in protecting the environment and particularly conserving water quality and the quantities.
Okay, thank you, Rosinah, and thank you, participants, for listening. Tea farming in Kenya is a common practice. It is practiced in the highland areas where tea does very well. And tea is grown in small-scale farms by small-scale farmers working with KTDA, but we also have large-scale tea farmers who have their own factories that process the tea. We have more than 23 different companies that process tea in Kenya, but the biggest tea company that processes tea is Kenya Tea Development Authority, which was formed through the government as a parastatal, and it is owned by farmers, and the factories are managed by farmers. And the directors are elected by farmers, and the choices and decisions that happen in those factories and in the farms and in the buying centers for the tea farmers is decided by people elected by the small-scale farmers. Tea, Kenya is the second tea producer in the world. And Kenyan tea is of very high quality, and it is used to blend other teas. It's the common tea that is sold as English breakfast tea, the black tea that people drink. We don't do a lot of green tea in Kenya or purple tea, but it's being introduced gradually. But commonly, the tea is produced by picked by small-scale farmers, taken to the buying centers, taken to the factories, and it is processed within 48 hours of harvest. So that's what happens in the tea. And then when the tea has been processed, it is packaged and sold in bulk at the tea auctions in Mombasa in Kenya from each factory. When I talk about agroecology, agroecology is a very dear and very good process of managing land. In Kenya, we have tropical rainforests, and they manage themselves in a very agroecological way. And that's what we are trying to introduce in farmers' farms. You will find that the tea farms were farmed mainly for tea. It's a monoculture, and they have applied a lot of chemical fertilizer for a long time. So the soil has depreciated because of chemical use, and it is only one crop. But through agroecology, we are now introducing agroforestry to intercrop the tea with other different types of crops in the small gaps where tea don't grow in the tea plantation, to be able to bring in diversity in the tea farm. We are also encouraging farmers to do rainwater harvesting. They will do the terraces and the ditches and the holes within the farm to be able to harvest the rainwater and hold it in the ground, because the tea roots are very shallow. But we need roots that are deep, that will allow water to infiltrate slowly. So what happens is the agroforestry trees that are planted along the terraces and around the tea farms help the rainwater to seep in gradually and allows the soil to hold more water for the tea. Climate change has changed the rain patterns, and the rain-fed agriculture that tea depended on is not adequate. So now farmers have to harvest the water in their farms to be able to retain it in the retention ditches and be able to put it in the farms. In some of the large-scale farms, we are even seeing large-scale farmers irrigating their tea to be able to actually have enough water. Within the tea growing areas, most of them are catchment areas. So we also promote the catchment conservation and protection of the riverine and the riverbeds, because if you plant tea right to the riverbed, you will actually destroy the rivers. When I was a child, I was able to have big rivers. We would not cross some of those rivers. But now they've become so small and they have become like streams, because a lot of the riverine has been opened and exposed. So through agroecology, we are encouraging people to plant more indigenous trees in the riverine, and also to plant more indigenous trees around where the tea grows that does not affect the tea in terms of its production. The beauty also of the tropical trees that we plant around the riverine and around the trees is that they're able to drop the leaves and increase the carbon production in the soil and improve the fertility of the soil. So that's what's going on in the soil. In agroecology, we're encouraging farmers to do biofertilizers, which they're able to apply. And the biofertilizers use compost, they use carbon, they use a lot of natural nutrients that are able to feed the soils and promote the production of what the tea needs, which is not chemical and it is long living. So when you apply biofertilizer in the soil and introduce micronutrients that come with a biofertilizer, you improve the life of that soil, and you increase the micronutrients in the soil, and you bring back life into that soil. So the tea that is produced there is natural, and it is healthy, and it is better than when you use chemical fertilizer. So that is what we do. The other thing is that when the rain rains and we harvest the water in the tea plantation, the water gradually gets into the river Rhine. It actually, the tea plantations act as water harvesting points. And when you apply a lot of chemicals or fertilizers in the tea plantation, those chemicals will get into the water, which will affect the quality of water that ends up in the river, and people utilize it either for irrigation or for domestic use or livestock use. But when you do agroecology, everything is natural, and soil is a very good filter of water. So the quality of water in agroecological farms, or where we do a lot of agroforestry, is clean and it is pure. And when you harvest it in the springs, it is very clean and it is very healthy. But where you apply toxic pesticides and you apply chemical fertilizer, the quality of water that ends up in the river will be poor, because it will have the chemicals and the toxic pesticides that have been used on the farm, which end up becoming toxic to the livestock and the people that use it later on. And even if you use it for irrigation, some of those trace elements of those toxic chemicals will be in the water. So the quality and quantity of water is affected by the farming, and that's why we are promoting agroecology, because agroecology is a natural system that works like a forest, and it filters and creates a system that is more sustainable, that is more durable, and leaves the land better than when we started farming on it. And it will be very useful for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esther. I want to remind us to continue bring any questions on the question and answer session. You can chat them down there and we shall be able to respond as we continue. So feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Now I would like to invite Samuel to talk about the interventions, and particularly is the practice on organic agriculture and how and what change as he has been able to achieve since the interventions that have been applied. So Samuel.
Thank you for the opportunity that I've been given. I have benefits through my projects as a farmer. I've gained knowledge. Doing that knowledge is power. That has helped me to have tea using manure, organic manure. It has increased my production by an average of 35%. I've also built that is as least is about 10%. I've also seed saving project as a seed bank. Also, I have fruits through nurseries, e.g. avocado and further tea nurseries. I've also acquired knowledge on kitchen garden. I do plant vegetables and other food crops. I get income, and also I feed on the same for health benefits. I've also gained on water harvesting technologies. This is through collecting rainwater, through water pans that we use at the dry period after the rains to make our produce mature to the market. I've also benefited on goat manure, milk, and also stock, whereby we sell to other people. And more to that, we have energy saving projects where we have modern eco's, where we protect the environment by not cutting trees for cooking, often as we used to do before. Number two, we have income generating initiatives that we have acquired as a farmer. We have increased income from the increased tea production. And, we are there.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. Before we move to Duncan, I would like to invite Esther to respond to this question on what kind of acceptance levels are there for agroecological approaches to tea cultivation in Kenya. Is it expanding? Thank you. So I can repeat again, what kind of acceptance levels are there for agroecological approaches to tea cultivation in Kenya? Is it expanding? Esther.
The agroecological practices for tea farming in Kenya is a new idea. The farmers who have practiced it are doing very well. The expansion is slow because it is labor intensive. Making of the biofertilizer and even the nutrients to make the biofertilizer is not easy. And when you do the agroecology and the agroforestry trees that you plant in the tea plantation, they take time to happen. People find it easy to use chemical fertilizer and chemical pesticides to spray because it is faster, it's easier, and it is not labor intensive. But those farmers who have embraced agroecology have actually seen the transformation in the changes in their farms. And more farmers are taking it up. The farmers we are working with have now integrated because usually there are very fertile spots on the farm that remains as gaps, and that's where they plant the trees, they plant the fruits, they plant the vegetables. And where farmers have embraced these, they have seen increase in terms of productivity and income, because now the farmer does not depend on tea alone, but they're able to produce their own fruits and vegetables, they're able to sell the surplus, they're able to prune the trees that they plant and get their own firewood. So they don't have to depend on tea alone. And those farmers that have practiced it have seen the change and transformation in their lives. And quite a good number of them are even earning more income from the other activities that they are doing rather than tea. So it makes it easier for them to make choices and decisions in terms of finances and issues that they are implementing. But it is taking time, we're expanding slowly. And we are doing it in a holistic way. So it is not only the tea that we are doing agroecology for or using biofertilizer for, but it is the total farm being transformed to agroecology, and it takes time. It's easier with the small scale farmers rather than the large scale farmers. But I've done it on my tea farms, and my tea farms are 5-7 acres. And since I started practicing agroecology, the productivity of the tea has improved. The greenness in the tea has remained longer. The soil does not dry up or crack faster. It's able to absorb more water, and it's able to retain more moisture for a longer period. So productivity goes on throughout the year. Even when my neighbors are not harvesting tea, I'm harvesting. And a lot of them are coming to ask, what are you doing that we are not doing that will make our lives easier? So it is actually a mindset. What we are doing in agroecology, people tend to see it as traditional, they see it as primitive or conservative, very local. But now people are starting to realize that it is a healthier way of life, and they're adapting when they see the results. It is slow, but people are picking it up and it is working. On the rainwater harvesting, when you do the retention ditches and the holes among the tea plantations and you retain the water, the moisture content and even the microclimate that is created in the tea is very good. And this is a very easy way for farmers to adapt. And quite a good number of the farmers we work with have adapted it, and it is working for them. So I can say with the farmers we are working with, almost 50% have adapted. And even some of the neighbors who come to the groups where we are working to learn from them have even gone and done it better than the people we trained. So it is speaking and it is working, and people are appreciating it.
Yeah, maybe just on before we continue, Esther, you can also respond to this. Do you experience pest problems in the tea? If so, what are they?
Okay, tea does not have pest problems. In most of the farmers that we work with, we've not seen any pest problems. So tea is a tree, it grows. And usually when you start having challenges in terms of pests, so when the tea stops producing effectively, we prune. It is showing signs that it has overgrown or it's not strong. So most of it is just pruned off, but there are no common diseases and pests in tea.
Thank you, thank you. I would request Duncan to respond to this question also from the participants, which is from Anne-Marie. Very interesting and helpful stories. Thank you, Anne. Can you say more about how you adapt to climate change and whether these practices are spreading to farmer to farmer? Are the majority of farmers in the area still using industrial model, or are they learning from your agroecology methods? Duncan, maybe together with Samuel, you can respond to that. So I can repeat it again. Can you say more about how you adapt to climate change and whether these practices are spreading farmer to farmer? Are the majority of farmers in the areas still using this industrial model, or are they learning from your agroecology methods?
Yeah, some of the ways in which we adapt to climate change is first by diversifying. Sometimes some of the common crops are affected by the vagaries of weather. And what we are doing with the farmers is to encourage them to embark on those that will work very well in the prevailing circumstances. For instance, we are now encouraging them to plant avocado fruits alongside tea farming, so that it can be a lie back after if at all, tea will be affected more by the circumstances. And at the same time, we are showing them how to collect water, that is harvest water, so that they can be using the same when it is drier. Because normally where we operate from, it's known to be a very wet place, but nowadays it's not very, very wet. It is also experiencing some dry spells, which are very uncommon, and it seems those are the effects of climate change, and therefore they have, if at all they will continue being farmers, know how to conserve water, because crops will always require water. On the issue of farmers learning from one another, that one is speaking very well, because as Samuel was telling me in the morning, that some farmers see what he does, and then they kind of want to know more from him, and they start replicating in their own farms.
Thank you, Duncan. And just as we continue, is just to add that yes, we have realized that farmers learn best from learning from amongst themselves. So as Duncan says, the farmers are learning from each other. Now I would like we move on to Samuel to help us respond to this question. Have your neighbors or other farmers around you learned from your farm, and how have they been able to replicate the learnings that they have been able to make? So I think it's a continuation of that question. So how have your neighbors or other farmers been able to learn from your farm, particularly on the practices like organic agriculture and other practices, and how are they replicating the learnings that they are making from your farm as a farmer? You are muted, please unmute. Good, continue.
My neighbors, as they learn through the information.
Hello.
Hello. I continue.
Yes, Rosinah seems to have gone off. Please continue.
I go ahead.
Mm.
My neighbors learn more from what practices I do on organic.
Maybe we can move on to the next question from Esther as they check their connection. Maybe Esther, you can talk more about the elements of you have integrated among the tea communities in enhancing conservation and protecting the quality and the quantities of water along the catchment areas. So as we wait for Duncan and Samuel to come back online.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rosinah. That is a very important question. When we start working with farmers in the groups in relation to tea, most of the farmers we are working with are farmers who worked with KTDA before. They've been trained by KTDA extension workers. So the first thing we had to do was to work with KTDA and the KTDA extension farmers. There's an organization that has a project called rainwater harvesting, which is doing almost what we are doing in agroforestry, but they focus more on planting trees and harvesting water. So it's very important that when you enter communities, you have a common understanding with all the stakeholders. When you go in as an individual, sometimes it creates competition. So sometimes it's good to work with all the stakeholders, the people working in PTDA, the workers, the rainwater, the people trained by Rainwater Association, so that we have a common understanding of what we are going to train the farmers on. Then the farmers have been able to identify the people they want trained, the key farmers who are going to be trained as farmer trainers. So the farmer trainers were identified, and together with the people who had worked with Rainwater Association, we were able to train the main farmers who are going to actually have their farms as sites for training on issues of nursery establishment, management, grafting, rainwater harvesting, riverine conservation, biofertilizer production, and all these activities. RODI has an agroecology center, so we bring them to the center, we train them on how to make bokashi, how to make the liquid fertilizers, how to inoculate whatever we are having into the soil, how to use it, what can be used for tea and what cannot be used for tea, and what can be used for other crops and other plants that are growing differently, and even how to do fodder for their animals. We also emphasize on rainwater harvesting, so we train them on how to mark the terraces using the A-frame, because you cannot tell them to use the technical equipment. So we make the A-frames, and using the A-frames, they're able to mark the terraces where they want to do the retention ditches, where to dig the holes, where to hold the water on the farm. And even on the land, they're able to map and know which trees do they plant on which part of the land, because you just don't plant the trees anyhow. You have to plan your farm and identify the areas that are suitable for planting the different trees, the fruit trees, the vegetables, where they used to grow fodder crops for their animals. So once you're able to talk with the farmers and reason with them, and they are able to accept and change their attitude, that is the beginning of implementation. And they're able to work effectively to implement those activities and skills that you have trained them. So we do the training step by step. We don't train everything at a go, but we do step by step as we do demonstration. Our training is more practical and demonstration as you apply the theories and they understand. We also do exchange visits where farmers who have practiced the skills we have trained before and have worked and are effective, they're able to go and see and listen to what those farmers are saying, and they learn from farmer. We call it farmer to farmer training. So they're able to pass on the skills to fellow farmers, and they're able to learn, and they're able to understand, and they go and practice. The interests and talents of farmers are different. You'll find one farmer will decide to do more vegetable production and nurseries in vegetables. Others will focus more on livestock and livestock production. Others will focus on more fruits and fruit nurseries and selling of seedlings. So depending on the interest of the farmer trainers we have trained, we actually focus on the interest of that farmer and actually support them to set up the system, and they're able to learn and pass on the skills to others. And that's how we've been able to succeed, to be able to train these farmers to implement these activities. And because of those activities happening on the farm, the tea production has also improved. So the production in terms of weight of kilos has gone up. And therefore the farmers are happy doing what they're doing because they're seeing the results.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you. I can see Duncan and Samuel are back. Sorry, we had lost them. I think it's connection challenges. We were just continuing. So Samuel, you can pick from where you stopped in terms of responding. Just start again because we had lost you. And then after that, we shall be able to respond to the few questions that are coming on the Q&A. So Samuel, please.
Thank you. We are back. To my neighbors, we pass information to them as they come and visit our farms.
If possible, could you put the camera on? Sorry, is it possible you put the camera on?
To buy
okay, just continue with the audio. Just continue without video, then we shall listen.
Okay, let's continue. Our neighbors, we pass information to them as they come to buy the produce, the veggies, the tree nursery plants, and also milk. As we pass the information about the organic farming, they change their way of styles by testifying that what they buy and what they consume is healthy. And also, they find that when we use manure, organic manure, and organic fertilizers that are organic, we get a lot of production throughout the year. And they also learn about the water that we harvest through the water pans, which is a technology that is very much interesting to them. So they find that you can harvest water and use it for the dry season on production. They also turn their mind to grow their own organic food because of safety and also to their health. They also adapt planting fruit trees, e.g. avocado, whereby they get income, a lot of income from these three fruit trees. That's where we are to our neighbors, and they are happy with that.
Thank you, Samuel. Samuel, just to remind you, Samuel is one of the small-scale farmers in Kenya. Now, I wanted us to answer, Duncan could help us answer this question. Are there any community-governed water sources for agriculture, or are the ponds and water catchment managed at an individual farm scale? Duncan, I can repeat the question. Are there any community government water sources for agriculture, or are the ponds and water catchments managed at an individual farm scale?
For the question, where we operate from, there are no organized water or water governed systems by the community for agriculture, but for other users, yes, because we have the water resource users associations, which are community-based organizations. But for agriculture, not yet. But now at the farm level, that's where we come in and encourage farmers to harvest water, which is otherwise run off and waste to be used in agriculture. That's where we are as at now.
Thank you, thank you. I want to invite Esther to also respond to this question. What is the role of women in the tea communities? Is there a balance of roles and decision-making with men? Esther, what is the role of women in tea communities? Is there a balance of roles and decision-making with men?
Thank you very much, Rosinah. Tea is a cash crop. You'll find that in Kenya, most of the cash crops are managed and controlled by farmers, by men. The issue of access and control is still a challenge in the tea farms. You will find that the women do the picking, they will do the management of tea, they'll do the harvesting, they'll do the deliveries to the buying center. But in a very common, about 75%, most of the money that comes from tea is actually managed and controlled by farmers. And that is where we bring in the gender and development issues on access and control of these resources for women. Because sometimes the women work throughout the year, but they don't earn anything from it. A lot of small-scale micro enterprises have brought training within the community. We also train them to do table banking and saving, to be able to put money into a pool as farmers, which they can borrow and loan to themselves. When we start the table banking groups, the common groups that people who come to the groups are women. But when the groups grow and they become able and have more money in the pool, the men come to try to control the groups, because women are now controlling and having more resources and money. So when it comes to the tea money that is made, most of the tea is predominantly managed by men. And we have trained the women to technically be able to talk to the men, reason with them, commit them to take loans to pay school fees, commit them to take loans to construct the houses they live in, or make investments on the farms. But where the men are drunkards and they don't want to participate, sometimes the women just work and they don't get anything. So the balance in terms of resources from tea income will vary from family to family, depending on how cooperative the husband is and how effective the woman is in convincing the husband to work together as a family. But most of the time, especially when bonuses come, it's the men who control the tea money. And it's up to the women to be very technical in how they get the money to pay school fees and meet their family needs. But as for now, I can for sure say tea money is predominantly controlled by small-scale men farmers, who sometimes don't even work on the farm. The only thing they do is own the land, but the women and the children work on the land and they do the production. And that's why this project by Wamadife is very good, because we train them to do vegetables, we train them to do livestock production, produce more milk, produce more goats, produce more chicken, produce more foods, and diversify the income. And when the women focus on that and income becomes more, the men now start coming in to listen. And that's now why we are able to catch them and train them on gender and development and encourage them to share the resources as a family and to plan on how to utilize those resources. And we've seen the transformation in those families. And even men have reduced the substance abuse and alcohol abuse and become better people as a result of the intervention of the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther, for that. We shall pick the other questions as we continue. We have not responded, but before we respond to them, we shall just continue shortly, then we shall come back to them. I want to go to Duncan and ask the question of why should the tea farmers and other small-scale farmers in Kenya adopt organic agriculture, and what are the benefits around it? Why should tea farmers and even other small-scale farmers in Kenya and globally adopt organic agriculture production practices, and what are the benefits around it? Duncan?
Thank you. First of all, the small-scale farmers should adopt agroecology or organic farming because first we have to agree that they depend on that small farm for their own food, and therefore they need safe food. They need to have nutritious food so that they can also have healthy households and families. Agroecology, at the same time, is cost-effective production way because of the use of local farm or bioresources, which we have seen from our aid that it lowers the cost of production by an average of 24%, and therefore gives us a very good reason why they should go to organic farming or agroecology. It has also showed that the other benefit, it has stable yields because for the cash crops, especially the tea, we have seen that it increases the yield by an average of 26.3%. For food crops, that 9.7%. And it's also bringing an income, more income by 11% to the households. From a technical point of view, we know that agroecology caters for the long-term soil fertility. Nobody would want the soil of a small scale farm to be dilapidated or to be degraded. And then we also know that it's a good way of conserving the environment. And because of the agroecological practices that we saw. At the same time, we know that it helps the farmers to adapt to the vulnerability of climate change, because once you harvest your water and you use it, you are not the same as the farmer who is depending on rain-fed agriculture. And therefore, the practices that have been put in place, including agroforestry, planting of trees, will make sure that you have a lot of resources that can be used in the farm by the household members, as opposed to depending on materials to be brought from outside the farm.
Thank you, Duncan. Before we move on, we can respond to some of the questions that are also coming out from the chat. One of the questions from Ruth is there any interest being shown in what you are doing by the UN agencies based in Nairobi, particularly, for example, the UNEP? I can request Esther to respond to that. Is there any interest being shown by the UN agencies based in Nairobi, for example, the UNEP?
Currently, we have not had very close interaction with the UN and the UNEP organizations that we are working with. The project we are working with is totally funded by Tudor Trust. And the UN organizations have not really expressed any interest in relation with what we are doing. We would be very happy if they were able to come in, especially on the issues of gender and development, issues on climate change. And we feel like sometimes the area where we are operating in is not an interest area of this, because you realize that they are following more on the ASAL areas and the marginalized communities. That's where you find a lot of UN projects. But in the cash crop areas, where the farmers are seen to be more able, more stable, and they are perceived to be more wealthy, because the tea is actually a green desert. If it doesn't pay, the farmers just go hungry. But when people see cash crops and they see all that income that is coming in that county, that most of it does not even end up in the homes or buy any food, people see those counties as wealthy. So in Kenya, development is focused more on the per capita income of that county. So where the per capita income is lower, that is where the UN organizations focus on. So no, we don't have any interest in the UN organizations in what we are doing.
Okay, so I will also respond to this question, which has also been asked. Great stories, Esther. Have you or anyone else been able to write up and publish these stories of change experienced by the farmers? Maybe I can respond quickly. We have been able to document some of the success stories from the project that we have been engaging on since 2017. So we could be able to share with anyone who is interested on the whatever we have been able to document. But I know there's a lot out there that needs also still to be documented, because there have been a lot of successes from this particular project. Now I would like us now to move on to Duncan, not Duncan, but Samuel. What are some of the challenges in involvement of organic agriculture as a farmer, and how do you think they should be addressed?
Okay. Thank you for the chance that I've been awarded. Challenges that we get on organic farming, we lack government support on inputs through policies that we adopt to help the farmers, the organic farmers, to move ahead and to have easy practices in farming. We also have a huge competition by our opponents, the conventional agricultural promoters, whereby we are moved together in the market because they are there and we are there. We also lack the infrastructure for organic trade, which will help the organic farmers to have the good conditions of making his trade and get the income that he expect. We also have limited support from NGOs and private sectors, which limits the farmer not to exceed beyond his wish as we are moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. We'll go back to Esther and ask this question. Do the tea farmers ever see the final products that the tea goes into? If not, how do you think this will change their perception of the harvest and the remuneration? Again, do the tea farmers ever see the final product that their tea goes into? If not, how do you think this will change their perception of their harvest and remuneration?
Yes, the tea farmers see the final product, because before we could not access the tea, but right now all the KTDA factories sell their tea. They have shops within the factory at the gate where farmers can go and buy the tea and utilize it. And even farmers who want to do business of selling tea can go and buy in bulk and sell it where they want to sell it. The challenge with Kenyan tea is that it is auctioned as bulk. We cannot package Kenyan tea and take it to Europe, take it to the US, take it anywhere, and compete with the multinationals that are buying our tea in bulk. This is something that needs to be considered. But because we were producers of local and raw material, you cannot compete with the British and some of the American companies that are packing tea and selling it all over the world as British tea to be able to penetrate the same markets. But it's something that needs to be considered. How do we package? How do we blend? How do we make the tea better for local consumption? Because I know here in Kenya, people like masala tea, they like herbal teas, but sometimes they can't access it. So if the small scale farmers, we can be more creative so that they're able to plant the herbs and be able to buy the processed tea from the market and be able to blend it and repackage it and put them in very nice packs and labels, it can find a market. But that perception and attitude that tea is an export crop is what is in the minds of our people. So we need to create a situation where people see marketing as an income generating project and actually sell it in the local market and both international market as blended tea or the same tea but with another name. So that is what I know about tea. At least when I was a child, even if you process tea at home, if you were found, you'd be arrested. Now we actually process the green tea which we drink in our farms, and we also are able to get the PF1, PF2, which is called which is actually supposed to be exported, and we actually drink it in our homes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Esther. There is one question here. What kind of support from European actors, such as the NGOs, could be helpful for your work? I think I'll attempt it, then I'll also request Esther and Duncan and Samuel to add something. So from my end, I think there's a lot still to be done. And whatever we have piloted in the tea farming communities along Murang'a and Kiambu needs to still to be upscaled in other parts of the country. And because these interventions have proven to be very helpful for the farmers in terms of their income generation, also looking at the sustainability aspect of the environmental conservation and aspects related to the good practices like organic practices that we are employing, like agroforestry. All these are sustainable practices that look into the future of our future generations. So this needs to be upscaled. So there's a lot to be done, whereby we can still work together with other European actors and be able to reach out to more and more farming communities. Among the communities that we are working in Murang'a and Kiambu, there's still also a lot of work still to be done. Not everything that we have been able to, there are things that we still admire to do in those areas that we have been working with, and particularly issues to do with like climate change interventions. So there's more work to be done. So I want to also request Samuel to try to respond to that, and also Duncan and Esther. We can start with Samuel, then Duncan, then Esther on the same question. We can't hear you, Duncan.
What I can say, I wish to echo your words in first appreciating that whatever has been done is very important, but still not very adequate because we've only reached quite a few farmers, whereas we have so many farmers in Murang'a and Kiambu. As well as when we need to safeguard the watersheds, we need to do and intensify the work that we've already started. And therefore, what I would say is that European actors could maybe help upscale the same program, or even some specific aspects of the program. For instance, if someone feels that I would only want to support water harvesting, that is welcome. Or maybe reforestation, that is also welcome. But I think it would be a good thing to continue with that work here in Murang'a and Kiambu, as well as also go to other parts, because our interest in this project is to safeguard the water catchment areas around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any addition from somewhere, or do we move to Esther? I think we can move to Esther. Esther?
Thank you very much. For European funders and donors, it's very important for us to realize that when you do agroecology and environmental environment, most of the materials and resources that are used are available on the farm. Usually when we write proposals, they always say 30 or 25% should be goes to overheads or salaries in terms of staff. But you realize that the time you spend gathering those materials and working with staff is very demanding. So one thing we would like the donors to do is to support more trained and qualified, either trained farmers or extension workers with the organizations that we are working with, to be able to get more people to be reached and trained in terms of agroecology, conservation farming, and making of biofertilizers, because they are locally available. The other thing we expect the funders and donors to do is to fund long-term projects. You'll find that a donor will give money for 1 year or 2 years. And that time, the impact of the project has not been felt. So I feel like when a donor decides to invest money, they should be investing on 5-year or 10-year projects where they will work with those farmers and see the transformation. You can actually work in one county like Muranga for 2 years, and then you actually take on more counties as you go, so that the farmers you're working with and who have perfected the practice can be used as training venues as you expand and reach out to more farmers and be able to practice. Then the issue of documentation and sharing out and speaking and telling our story out there in Europe for people to understand what we are going through and the challenges. Because what is happening is that a lot of the toxic pesticides that are being sold to the tea farmers and being promoted by multinationals are actually coming from Europe. They have been banned from Europe, but it is finding its way into our markets and poisoning our soils, poisoning our foods, and poisoning the water. But still, the crops that we grow for export will still end up in Europe. So if we were able to team together with the European companies to create awareness in Europe and to be able to stop those companies that are producing toxic pesticides and bringing them here from producing them, then we'll be safe, because the pesticides that will be available in our agri-vet shops will be safe pesticides, and that will help us produce safe food, both for local people here and for export. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. And maybe just to add on as we finish on that question is that one of the things that we want to see is having organic tea from Kenya. As Esther mentioned, as we started, Kenya is the second largest exporter of tea in the world. So we are looking in the future to, through this project, how can Kenya have organic tea? And because as we all know, the organic sector is gaining a lot of attention from consumers and globally. So we look forward to how can these projects support the small scale farmers working together with all the other stakeholders and have organic tea from Kenya. Yeah, so with that, we want to move now to the next set of questions. And I will go now to Ndirangu and ask about the issue of why should agroecology and organic agriculture be everyone's business, particularly in the tea farming communities? Why should agroecology and organic agriculture be everyone's business in tea?
Thank you. Agroecology or organic agriculture should be an area of concern for all of us, because first, it brings a balance and a good relationship between the people, food production and consumption, as well as healthy interactions with their surroundings. I'm sure no one would want to see their soils degraded. Neither would they want to live in degraded areas. No one wants to see polluted water. No one would want to have the destroyed habitats for other living organisms. We want all the existing plant species to be there for this generation and the future generations also. We also want to have healthy populations. No one would want to develop unhealthy people. And therefore, that's why we need to keep agroecology in mind as our own business, all of us, because the other methods of production have brought about what I've just mentioned: degraded soils, polluted water. We have destroyed the habitats for other organisms. We are diminishing the genoplasm for our plants. And in fact, we know that all the chemicals and those things that are not controlled have affected our health so much and the health of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. I want us to also respond to a question that is coming from the chat that is directed to Esther. And it's from Anne again. You, Esther, mentioned that the larger farmers find it more difficult than small-scale farmers to adopt agroecological methods. Can you explain why?
Agroecological methods need more labor. Most of the large-scale farms are typicals who are only employed to do typicking. Quite a number of the large-scale farms are even motorized in terms of picking. So they want to do everything in a motorized way. The agroecology practices where you do the water harvesting, the weeding, the planting of the agroecology trees need more labor. And they are looking at the economics of scale. So most of the large-scale farmers just want to go into production on the minimum level and make their profits. Most of the large-scale farms are owned by multinationals who are, some of them are not even Kenyans. And even those who are Kenyans have very large pieces of land, and they only look at the profit margin of the land. Half the time, they don't really care for the soil and the water. But small-scale farmers care because you fetch the water from your farm and you do the practices. So the large-scale farms are managed by employed staff, and it is a mechanized system. And the care for the soil and the management of the soil is not a priority. They are looking at the margins in terms of profits and income. Small-scale farmers own the land. They grow their food on the land. They live on the land. They get their water on the land. And that is where they manage agroecology better, because they have a close relationship with the soil where they live. That's what makes the difference.
Thank you, Esther. I would also want to respond to one of the questions that is coming up. How do we evaluate the Kenyan agricultural policies, their support to scale up agroecology through extension service and creation of marketing option? In Kenya, we have the national government and we have the county government, whereby the national government, they make the overall policies, but they are cascaded, or the counties are also supposed to replicate the policies that are coming from the national government to their own specific counties. And in Kenya, agriculture is a devolved function. So far, there is a lot of counties coming up with agroecological policies, like in some, like the project site we are in, Kiambu, as an agroecology policy that is being at advanced stages of approval by the county government. And Murang'a has also started the process of coming up with agroecology policy. And generally in Kenya, there is a lot of goodwill on the issues of agroecology, both on the national government and the county government. The only challenge is when it comes to the support from the government, it's minimal in terms of implementation and processes of the agriculture sector. There has been the budgetary allocation for agriculture has not been as per the Maputo declaration of 10%. We still have very, very low budgets, and it makes the aspects of policies very difficult to implement. But the good thing is that there are different stakeholders who are coming up to support or to complement the role of the government, and in particularly in the agriculture sector. And just to notice that in Kenya, agriculture ideally is the major backbone of this economy. And most of the citizens depend on the agriculture for livelihoods. So it's a very important sector. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of goodwill for supporting the agroecology. Yes. So I would like now to move on to just some responses from Samuel. Just in terms of the income generation, but what initiatives by the Iwama DFE project that we have been working together, what initiatives have you been able to engage in terms of diversifying your income generation as a small scale farmer that have been useful for yourself and also maybe to the neighbors? Samuel.
Okay. Through the initiatives, right? We are there. We have the increased income on tea production. We also do have the sales on these livestock, e.g., goats, hybrid goats, whereby we have sales on these livestock and their produce and their products, that is manure and milk. Also, we have sales on the vegetables which we plant organically, and we have extended these to the local market at our own center, Kagari. So this one have helped us a lot. We have created that market, and it is very, very positive. We are giving our customers the right product, and we are making sure they are not complaining. We also do have these seed sales, the seedlings from our seed bank. We also have the fodder trees we sell to the neighbors and the farmers allowed. We also do have these tree nurseries where we sell fruit trees, avocado. We started along 2017. We have seen the benefits of this along line with other income generating lines like tea. And we are safe on that. You see, we have a great support on this. We have also more milk from these livestock, whereby we use these fodder clubs like Caliandra and the Desmodium. So our milk is increasing. We have less cost, lesser cost on production. Still, we see through seed bank, we are able to select the good seeds from our own farms. We are able to plant at the right time the good seeds of high yield that are for the environment that is allowed. That allows us. So we have a lot of benefits that we can say all about. But here, as I would add, being small scale farmers, we need a lot of support because what we produce is determines what will be eaten elsewhere in the world. So we need a lot of support as we move ahead as small scale farmers.
Thank you very much, Samuel. And just to add is that there have been very different, interventions for diversifying income generation for this project, particularly because the tea farming, it's a product that cannot be consumed in the morning every time. So we have also introduced an aspect of nutrition. So we wanted the farmers to diversify their livelihoods and come up with different incomes. And one of the things is like vegetables and also small livestock. And these are also helping them to be, nutrient sensitive so that they can also eat nutritious food. Because as a farmer, of course, you cannot depend on tea. And you see most of them sell tea and they keep buying on products from shops which are not ideally probably safe because they are not organically grown. Sometimes the farmer can buy a lot of processed food. Maybe they don't have like yams, which they can take in the morning. They have to buy bread, which is not, sometimes it's a lot of wheat. So we had those aspects of trying to look at, even as introduced the diversified income generation for farmers, how can these contribute to the health of the farmer and also get more income so that they can be able to have income through the year. And another aspect we have introduced is also marketing. Actually, we have, and I think Duncan will talk about the markets that we have been able to facilitate and support through this project in Kangare and in both Kiambu and Muranga. So these markets are ideally helping the farmers so that they can be able to sell the products there, excess products there, so that they are not compromised, or sometimes the products don't get to rot on the farm and all that. So those are aspects also of empowering the farmers. And we are even looking forward in the future to have the farmers having some of the products, and as I mentioned, the organic tea, which is certified. And we are trying to work with the Tea Research Institute here in Kenya and see how we can be able to have organic tea, so that farmers can be able to get the premium prices for the organic tea that they can be able to produce. So that was just to add on that aspect of the empowering farmers in terms of diversified income generation. So I would now like to ask Esther to give, now that agriculture is the backbone of most African countries, and particularly like Kenya, what is your call, or what are you urging different stakeholders to do in the terms of supporting the tea farmers, and also in terms of looking at environmental protection and watershed management?
Okay, thank you, Rosinah. According to what statistics are saying, they are saying the next wars that we are going to fight are water wars, because we are losing a lot of the blue water. The
Yes.
water that we are turning into gray and it's not able to come back to blue is limited. So first of all, we need to save the water that we have as much as possible. The earth is not expanding. By using toxic pesticides and fertilizer and chemicals, we are killing the soil that we have. We need to heal the soil that we have and make it healthy and make it more productive. So if we are able to go agroecological and do conservation farming and do agroforestry and do organic farming, first we will heal the soil that we have and improve the productivity and improve the micronutrients and biodiversity of that soil, which will improve the biodiversity in terms of plant population and even animal and insect population, and the pollinators will increase. These will in turn improve our food productivity, but not only improve food productivity, but we'll be producing safe food that people will eat and they will be healthier. Because if you look at the non-communicable infections that people are suffering from now, is as a result of unhealthy food and nutritious food and toxic food that has a lot of toxic pesticides. So if people are able to access safe food, which is clean, safe water, which is clean, safe air and environment, which is clean, we are going to have a better agricultural aspect and healthier people. And my call to action, and I'm asking everybody to do, is that we need to speak in one voice against toxic pesticides, against monoculture, so that we have diversity on our farms and we produce safe and healthy food, which will be consumed on the farms and be sold out in our local markets and even exported. And therefore, it's very important that people in Europe who are buying tea should advocate for organic tea, safe tea that is healthy and free of toxic pesticides and chemicals, so that the soils here in Kenya will be healthier, because there'll be no market for chemically produced tea. We also advocate for the government of Kenya and the county government to be able to create agroecology and organic policies that will be used by farmers to grow food and remove the toxic pesticides from our shelves, so that farmers are able to access access safe inputs that they use on their farms to produce the vegetables, to produce the cash crops, and that will end up in our soils and our water and will be safe in future in the use of food. We should also promote a lot of rainwater harvesting and retention in our farms. The earth funds we are making, the retention ditches should be promoted more and more so that the rain runoff water remains on the farms and remains in the homes, and they are utilized there and it is used for agricultural use and domestic utilization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. I think that's very powerful to put in short. I know we are now moving towards the end, and I would like us now to move into the parting shot from the panelists. If you have any burning question, please put it down there because we have now very few minutes to close this session. And I want to invite also Samuel to give his parting shot, his final comments. It's just parting shot briefly. And then after that, also Duncan can also give a parting shot. Yes. And then after that, Esther will also give a final parting shot. And then I will also give final parting shot. So, Samuel.
Thank you for the moment that I've been given. I wish everyone takes this law to campaign for the ecological farming, because you cannot have polluted water, polluted food, and polluted environment, and then you have an outlet of a safe place, a safe area, and safe food, and you don't change your state of living. So we need this for everyone to take this opportunity to change the mind and practices so that we have the future generation that will live happy, safe, and healthy. And that's where we are. We campaign for that, and life will go on the safe side. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel, for those remarks. Duncan, please, your parting shot.
Thank you. First, I have to appreciate this opportunity. I thank all of you who made it possible for me to be in this session. And I also thank the other participants who are following and listening to us. My take would be that all of us need to join hands so that we can take this agroecology further into the outside world, so that people would be mindful of what they are producing and feeding to their neighbors. As they pocket that money, it needs to be ethical, and also let them be assured that they are also giving the right kind of food and the right kind of produce and products, so that we can be our brothers' keepers. I foresee that if we embrace agroecology wholesomely, the future generations will not judge us harshly. But they also say that we safeguarded the resources that were also bestowed on us by the people who were there before us. Therefore, I would ask all of us to play our right for all. For those who can support financially, let's put this as our responsibility into such a program. For us who can implement with the communities, we work very hard with them and honestly. And for the communities, if we give them the right thing, actually, we will have the whole world doing agroecology. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Duncan. And Esther, as you give your parting shot, you have a question here from Jeline. You mentioned that tea produced with toxic pesticides in Kenya is sold to Europe. You know which brands, under which brands? Again, you mentioned that tea produced with toxic pesticides in Kenya is sold to Europe. You know which, under which brands? Then you can give your part in short after you respond to that. We have very few minutes, 4 minutes to close the session.
Okay, tea produced in Kenyan farms is produced with toxic pesticides. But like I said, tea is auctioned in bulk. So you cannot actually specifically say this tea and this tea is what is produced with toxic pesticides. You can only tell if the toxic pesticides are present in the tea by tasting the final product. So if people in Europe were able to test the final product that is produced, they can tell, because we sell our tea as a raw material and we cannot say it's which brand that is being sold. We only sell our tea as PF1, PF2, and it is across the board in Kenya. They're produced by multinationals, by KTDA. So unless we have standards and systems that certify the tea and monitors the way we monitor in organic farming, how that tea is produced and ensures that it is safe by the time it's processed, then you can say this is free of toxic pesticides and this is not free of toxic pesticides. So I am sorry, I cannot tell you which tea is produced with toxic pesticides. A system and a method has to be put in place to test tea either at the auctions or in the markets where they are blended to be able to prove whether they have toxic pesticides. And it's one thing I'm calling on the consumers in Europe to speak to, so that we can transform from use of chemicals here in Kenya so that we can be able to have safety. My parting shot is to call on our county government and our Kenyan government, and even the global governments that influence the marketing and systems in tea, to ensure that the tea that is produced is safe and healthy, free of toxic pesticides, free of chemicals. They should also advocate for agroforestry. Like every tea farmer, somebody who has tea, what is the kind of population in terms of trees that they are supposed to have on their farm? And two, which trees? Are they tropical trees that are healthy and safe, that actually soak in the carbon and actually improve the environment? I also advocate for agroecology and safe food production and monitoring systems that ensures that by the time you are picking vegetables in the supermarkets, it is safe and it is free of chemicals, where farmers will not lie about what they're producing. The other issue is that in terms of capacity building and training, I advocate that more women are trained as trainers and extension workers to be able to reach out to more women. Because if you look at our extension work in Kenya, yes, we have a balance 50-50. But if you get to the actual ground, the people who are trained more on long-term seminars or residential seminars are men, because women don't have time. So the training should be tailored to be able to accommodate more women and bring in more women to be able to participate in the training and implementation of the projects. And more than that, we are calling for everybody to make sure that they check the food they eat. Is it safe? Is it free of toxic pesticides? Because if we refuse to buy toxic food, the people who produce food toxically will not be able to sell that food. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share
Thank
my
you,
experience.
Esther. Thank you. I think time is running out, and just to conclude from my end, thank you everyone for participating in this session. We hope it was useful. You can feel free to reach us. I've shared my email on the chat box, so you can feel free to reach us out, and we hope in the future we can get to be able even to do participatory research on organic tea here in Kenya. It's a real need that we need all to do. And just to mention that in Kenya, the small-scale farmers have 73%. They form a percentage of 73% of the total agriculture population. So with that, I want to thank you so much, and back to the ORFC team for closing the session. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Be blessed and prosperous New Year. Thank you from my end. Bye-bye. Thank you for the speakers as well. You did an amazing job. Thank you.